Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, the National Road Safety Partnership Program webinar, Driver Training, Driver Safety, Performance and Culture. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jerome Carslake. I'm Director of the National Road Safety Partnership Program and its many activities. To find out more, please visit the NRSP website and register for our newsletter or follow us on our social media LinkedIn page. Today's webinar will go for approximately 60 minutes. We've allocated around 40 minutes for Marcus and 20 minutes for questions. We've got a couple of pause points as we go along through the webinar, and Embedded will take a few questions depending on how things go as well. We are recording today's session, and it will be shared on the NRSP website. As pointed out on the slide here, we want to make it as interactive as possible, and we value your input. So please send your questions through by typing them into the question box. The chat box is also open to throw a few comments in if you want. But our goal is probably to have more in the question box so we can sort of draw back any that we don't get to as well. So let's find out a little bit more about our amazing person today we're going to be hearing from. So Marcus Kelly, welcome, Marcus.
Thanks, Jerome. Yeah, welcome to everybody. Thanks for attending, and I'll get straight into it. So,
before we dive in, let's hear a bit about. Let me sing your praise for a sec, so everyone knows. If you don't know who Marcus is, this is why he's a recognised expert in driver training and educator, built on years of experience being first of all a professional truck driver, and you're going to hear about these origins as Marcus goes through that really formed who he is. He really loves to contribute to the safety of the work environment through leadership, education, and communication. And he's really enthusiastic in everything that he does. And if you really want to touch another thing, I think he loves a comprehensive understanding and positive connection with diverse people from many different multicultural backgrounds. And I think you'll really enjoy today's webinar. I certainly enjoyed the practice session with Marcus that we've had. And let's get it going, mate.
thanks very much, Jerome. Appreciate that. Okay. So I'll start at the beginning, and there's some similarities between my beginning and what's in industry right now. Except from the point of view that I sat with my father in a truck. That was my first exposure to logistics and transport way back when I was 14, on school holidays, bored. Mum wanted me out of the house, so I went with Dad for the day. There's one little ism there at the time. Dad was employed delivering frozen and fresh chickens to various businesses. He'd start 4 in the morning, and he'd come and pick me up around about the 6 o'clock mark. The first 2 hours was actually loading a 12 pallet rigid by hand with all the boxes of chickens and things. And he did one thing that as now became super relevant. We used to get to around about Cora Creek Road, which is about 50k out of where we started from, and he'd pull over for 15 minutes and have a power nap. And it used to bore the hell out of me because I couldn't move, I couldn't talk, I couldn't do anything. But way back then, this is mid-70s. Here was my father doing power napping back then, and I didn't know the relevance of it until I got well acquainted with fatigue management strategies. But anyway, after that, I was aspiring to be a motor mechanic at the time, and unfortunately, with a recession and 14% youth unemployment, it was a pretty hard gig to get an apprenticeship. So I did various jobs and things. My father's friend, he said to me, "Marcus, go and get yourself a truck license. You'll always have a job." And I thought, "Oh, yeah, okay, yeah." I remember going out with Dad, "Yeah, I'll go get my license and that." So I obtained my license in an old Dodge truck there. You can see the top right-hand corner picture. It looks very, very much like that. It was a 6-speed synchro and with an overdrive diff, and it ran on petrol. For best part of 18 months, I sat on that license and I never did one iota of driving other than the license test. And anyway, it's moving along to further employment with Ford Motor Company. I was employed first as a production worker, and after a couple of months of doing that, I actually went across to the transport department. And what a different kettle of fish that was from the training vehicle. At the time, it was a Ford Louisville LNT 9000, 903 cubic inch V8 diesel, 15-speed Road Ranger. I couldn't think of anything far different from what I actually learned to drive in. Anyway, we were walking out. I got my start introduced to the supervisor and everything. Walking out to the truck with a particular fella. He says, "All right, jump in then." And I looked at him horrified. I thought, "You've got to be joking." Yeah. And I said, "Oh, look, I'll just watch you." And I remember his words was, "You've got your license, haven't you?" And the inference being that I knew how to drive. And I said to him, "Look, mate, I really don't know this truck. I don't really know. I haven't had experience. I'm willing to learn." And he goes, "Oh, all right then, no worries." So jumped in with him. We went for a little bit of a drive around, and that was my first night. So I'll move to the next slide.
And the incredible thing is that Dodge there that you've got. That's what I learned to drive on the farm as well. I think it was a flatbed rigid version. We'd go out, put the oats and all those sort of components. We use it during harvest and seeding as well as quite the old workhorse. So with the bench seat. So I think exact same sort of mirror experience. And I drove down south in Esperance, and I went straight from driving, I think, like a split diff into ACO and that sort of truck to a straight one, the crash diff and my experience. I totally get it when someone just throws you the keys and they go, "Good luck."
Very much my experience myself, yes. So at the time, this is the technology that was around at the time, and I wanted to illustrate this to show the difference on how things were when I first started and how things are now. So back then, people would be horrified to learn that it was actually put out 0 alcohol for truck drivers. Fortunately, 0 alcohol came in 84, 85. But it was not unusual. It was part of I suppose, the drinking culture at the time that, you went into a roadhouse, you're automatically given a stubby if you're a truck driver, and that was prevailing. But fortunately, in 84, 85, it all changed to 0 for all the better. The other thing was highway speed was regulated to 80k. The reason being, we still had some old junkers kicking around on the roads there with inefficient braking systems, basically air over hydraulics. And so the legislators at the time thought heavy vehicles should be restricted to 80k. Now, the vehicle that I had, the LNT that I displayed previously, there was about 5 of them in the fleet, and one of the guys who was a regular driver of his, he was saying that he can get his up to 120 kilometres an hour without a problem. So I took his word for that. The other thing was load restraint. So 9mm ropes and tarps was a main source of load restraint for general freight. You'd have an 18-ton load and it was just held on by canvas and, like I say, ropes. Fortunately, we progressed along to curtain side and Pantech trailers. They were fairly rare as such, but they were coming out and technology was taken off in that particular area. Tyres was an issue. You go back a few years ago, you used to see tyre tread all over the road and things like that. You don't see it much any day. But back when I first started, most tyre construction was nylon, not steel belted. The tubeless tyres were just starting to appear and became mandatory for front wheel, but all the drive tyres and trailer tyres had tubes in them, which had a propensity to explode once they started deflating. That's why we saw the tyre tread everywhere. The other thing was drum brakes and leaf spring suspensions were the go back then. They never had airbag suspensions, and drum brakes were on the front axle. So if the mechanic adjusted them right when you put your foot on the brake, that if you had it adjusted right, it drove true. But if not, it would either dive one side or the other. You'd actually get a little bit of a pull to one side. Interesting enough, a couple of years back, I asked the driver trainer for Packer to take me out on a B-double assessment, see how my skills were, and that I was really interested in, wanted an objective opinion. And he said, I have an old school habit. And because of drum brakes and things, when you're driving down the road, as soon as you took your foot off the accelerator, you tap the brake. And that was to take water and that off the drum brake shoes. And then the second application, then it ran pretty true. So times have changed back then. The main source of communication between drivers was CB radios. They're good for about 2K. Somebody coming past the other way, you would give them a hoy, how you going, mate, etc. But mainly it was used to identify if there was any police in the area. And you had little colloquialisms such as double bubbles or plane wrappers or candy cars, that type of thing. But the CB radios, yet, like I said, only good for about 2K. There was no mobile phones back then. If you wanted to call base because you had a breakdown or something, then you had to find a telephone box, and hopefully you had a couple of coins in your pocket there to give them a call, let them know what's happening. And the expectation at the time was changing your own flat tyres. So if you have a look in the right side of those pictures there, second down, there's a picture of a 5-stud Spider. Very, very interesting, because on my first night, I actually had to change a flat tyre. And I actually nearly hurt myself really badly with it, because I was given no information on how to do it. But I got the wheel brace out, jacked it up, got the wheel brace out, took the nuts off, and here I am sort of clanking around with the wheel brace trying to release the pressure there of the cleats that held the rim in place under pressure. And one of the drivers walking past, he literally grabbed me by the shoulder and pulled me out of the way. And he said, Marcus, that is really dangerous what you're doing there. He said that rim can pop off and those cleats can come out flying. And so I put the nuts back on. Then I got a good bang on one of the cleats, and the tyre shifted. The lesson there was I had no information. Here I am literally fumbling around trying to change a tyre, and I could have really hurt myself. At that particular time also, didn't have Google Maps or anything like that. We had a Melways. That was your Bible. That every driver had one. You always updated. It was a great resource at the time. There's a lot of things. So you did your route planning via the Melways and sort of work it out beforehand. One of the interesting features with it is it had bridge heights on the map. So where there was a low bridge of some sort, it would have a black ring around it with a number, and the number was a number of meters high that the bridge was on. So that's basically a snapshot of how it started. There's a couple of points there. Basically, no information about any of this. Pretty much complicated sort of how to do things. The risks there are very, very real. If you see the picture there of a bottle jack in the bottom left-hand corner, that's precisely how we used to change a tyre. We used to put a bottle jack in a precarious part of the suspension to raise the wheel off the ground, and we changed the tyre like that. So the culture at the time was basically, I describe it as being thrown off the end of a pier and expected to teach yourself how to swim. And I found that I was the junior. It was just a 20-year-old. Everyone was at least 10 to 12 years older than myself, and they saw me as a little bit of a curiosity as anything. And one of those things that didn't endear me reputation very well was the Road Ranger manual gearbox, Eaton 15 speed. So when I first watched someone changing gears, they did it in one motion. They didn't double clutch, they just did one motion. And I thought that was the way it was supposed to be. The problem was I was looking at a very experienced driver. He didn't explain to me why he was doing it that particular way, but I just thought that was the norm. No one told me any different. So I got a little bit of a reputation about grinding gears. And it always seemed to happen every time the supervisor was looking at me. And then one day I just happened to get a great guy, name of Jimmy Morrison. He jumped in with me. I was taken to another business unit, and he's watching me, and I grinded a gear, and he goes, "Why don't you double clutch?" Now this is 4 months into my employment. I said, "What do you mean by double clutch?" And so we went through it, and he showed me how to, and I never looked back from then. But it did teach me that having a mentor was gold. Having someone coach you through it, that you could talk to, that kept you out of trouble, was highly valued, very highly valued. Sorry. So in the driver's seat, I just like to comment there, my experience in that with owners and supervisors. So always believe that you should treat drivers as an asset. The Cambridge Dictionary defines an asset as a person's skill or quantity that is useful or helps you to succeed. I truly believe that. They're the ones that's making you the money out in the road. They're the one that's delivering product from A to B. They're the money makers. So treat them as an asset with care. So how do you do that? You establish a genuine connection with drivers. Look at it from a sports team coach approach. Right? He leaves none behind. He's got them all together. Learn their names. There used to be a saying at DECA, when you call a person by their name, how sweet the sound. Everyone likes to be acknowledged, and it's a sign of respect that you know their names. Invest in time with the drivers. Information, law changes, mud maps. I'll go into mud maps in a future slide, and toolbox meetings. And always have some positive reinforcement. Call out the good practices, the good things, the good events that's happening within the business. People like to hear that things are going well. We always hear day in, day out on things go wrong, but that positive reinforcement is very, very constructive. So take that opportunity to invest in safety messaging, acknowledgement of safe behaviour. I remember where I'm working currently, that's a 2-story building with a great view of the truck yard. And I seen a driver down there, and he was doing a pre-trip inspection. And I was just watching him, and had the doors open and checking everything out, and I was really impressed with him. I went straight down, caught up with him, and I said, "Mate, that was the best pre-trip inspection I've ever seen you do, ever seen anyone do. Well done." And he was more surprised than anything that actually someone had acknowledged that he was doing things right. So, like I said, acknowledge safe behaviour, reinforce it. That works. The other thing, one little comment that I will make there, is about keeping drivers in a regular truck. Emotional ownership leads to asset preservation. You could imagine that if you're going into a different truck every day, the care factor is almost zero. Why should I clean it? Why should I look after it? I'll have a different one tomorrow. Whereas if you get a regular truck to a regular driver, you can performance manage how they keep their truck, And usually the cleaner and more spick and span it is, it's actually a reflection also on how they do their work. And moving trucks around with drivers, you can imagine office staff, if you were changing office people's desks every day, they'll get pretty annoyed by it. Same thing happens with drivers. I know there's some businesses that work on that particular model, but that's where you can keep them in the same truck. So culture, safety, and the bottom line. The driver trainer, right, he sets the first impression on the company's expectations, safety culture, task objectives, teamwork, information, and support. I call it the real job interview, because initially a driver, he comes into the business, he has a short chat with the supervisor and all that. The supervisor determines on his history and his presentation that he's right for the business. But when you're sitting in a truck with someone, and the understanding is what happens in the truck stays in the truck, they become more honest and more open up on everything. And this is the opportunity right from the get-go that the driver trainer can set the precedents, the expectations of the company. You know, it could be, well, look, Mondays are pretty quiet, but Wednesday, Thursdays, we're flat out, we need people to do overtime, that type of thing. You can really ground the person into their expectations. They'll open up and ask some other questions and things that weren't in the job interview. But the driver trainer at that particular point is the most influential person that new drivers come across. The second point there, the driver trainer also helped create a culture where drivers make right choices and are willing to communicate safety concerns. Making right choices, a good example of that's coming up to an intersection where you've got a stale green light, you know it's going to go to amber pretty soon. Does the driver speed up, or does he start backing off in anticipation that an amber light's going to come up and the red? That's where you set your defensive driving parameters on observation, anticipation, keeping the vehicle rolling where you can. That is where the right choices come in. You want your drivers to make those right choices. So with an incident, it's continuous improvement. Every incident's a learning opportunity. Things do go wrong in transport. It's just the nature, it's just the randomness and the chaotic nature of the business that things happen. When they do happen, it's great to highlight it as a learning example to everyone else. You know, that this can become brought out in the toolbox meetings as such, and or safety conversations one-on-one. You don't identify the driver or humiliate him or anything. Everyone will find out anyway. But you don't, from a management point of view, you keep it professional, but you highlight the learnings out of it, and also look for systemic problems that's associated with the incident. Another thing is also identify your top performers. You know, their behaviour, their attitude, their positivity, their shares knowledge. They're the future ambassadors of your safety culture, right? And also their potential buddy trainers. And part of that, top performers, I remember I had a really good buddy trainer. I actually had 12 at the time. I had a couple of buddy trainers for each ism of a vehicle. So I had 3 there for small truck under 6 ton. I had a few more for heavy rigid and a couple more for heavy combination, and then 3 for multi combination, including a double dolly setup. And I relied on those guys. I mentored them into how to approach their driver training as such, and what to look for in drivers, and virtually how to get the message across. And one of my best driver trainers, buddy trainers that I had, was a guy named Parminder Singh. He, on the weekends and that, taught traditional Indian folk dancing. And you think, well, what's that got to do with transport? Well, this guy already had the foundations of a trainer. He knew how to communicate, he knew how to involve, he knew how to get the best out of people, he had patience. Well, getting him to apply those things in a driver mentoring role, it just worked out so well. It was very, very good. Look, have we got any questions on that so far?
I got questions for you, mate. I think that was absolutely fantastic. And just one thing I noticed you were just talking about just then is your use of language, how you shifted from using the words driver trainer to buddy trainer. Why is that?
So a driver trainer, look, is basically a delegated position within the company that is professionally he teaches. A buddy trainer is someone that's in the job. It's basically a full-time driver that's a cut above the rest, that can keep the message going, keep the safety awareness going, that the driver can lean back on questions and information.
Thanks for that. And I think that's quite a unique sort of differentiation. The other one is you touched on how, and hopefully get some other questions if you want to throw them in, but you touched on how one of the other organizations you're with, you began building, I guess, different drivers, trainers for different modes. So, and then I think you mentioned there's like 5 different sort of driver trainers for different sort of modes. So I guess in some ways that
Sorry, Jerome, you've cut out there. Look, I think I can anticipate Jerome's question there. Yeah, so the guys say doing door-to-door deliveries or pubs and clubs deliveries with alcohol, then, and you're employing someone to fulfill that particular role, then you get your driver buddy trainer to go with that person to they've got the skill sets. They do it day in, day out. They're experts at it. Yeah.
so I apologize. I have got a poor connection my end. I'm not sure what's going on. But I thought, yeah, as Cameron made a point there, buddy trainer in the chat, it's fantastic. Great advice from Wendy there for HSC professionals, how to interact and relate to drivers. And I guess simple thing is no one loves being yelled at, do they, Marcus?
No. There's nothing worse than a despondent workforce. People, if they feel isolated, and as a driver you work by yourself a lot of the time. Don't feel part of anything. You don't feel part of a team. You get pretty grumpy, and it's just a matter of time before you move on.
The other interesting point you made, I guess, is a lot of people, it's so easy to focus on the negatives all the time. We forget about the celebrations of the simple little things. Like you mentioned how you reached out and you engaged that driver at something that did really, really well in the yard.
Yeah. And look, it's about really about teaching people what success looks like. That's what it's all about. People don't quite understand. They know what things are like when they go wrong. You get sat in the office with the supervisor and you get a counselling note, and you might have a union delegate there, you might have a HR representative there, depending on what the issue is and all that. Everyone's quite aware of those sorts of consequences. But also you've got positive consequences too, that when you do something right, that some firms actually have an incentive program. One business I was involved with, we had a driver of the month, and they're all based on soft skills, attitude, stepping above and beyond, demeanor to the planning and allocation staff. So it can sort of work in your way of building up that rapport and that expectation.
And I guess there's just a point Cameron sort of raised, and this may not be relevant, or you may have some thoughts around other differences between countries. You think like US and EU, with regards to I guess some of these elements that we're talking about.
Well, there are some. I know I've heard of a business there that in America there they reward their driver that saves the most fuel. They give him a Ram truck, 4-wheel drive, as a reward. That in the EU you have 2 weeks of full intensive driver training. Going to different countries, going up icy mountain roads, same in America. You've got adverse sort of elements that can affect driver safety as such, so there's a lot more investment there.
Fantastic, Marcus. We'll move on now to the next part, and I think and then we can have some more questions at the end and a great discussion, as long as my connection keeps working.
Fingers crossed. Okay, so effective driver training. So, in my opinion, you invest in your buddy trainers. So, a buddy trainer, like I said before, is someone that's day in, day out, delivering freight, doing everything, but they have that extra skill set there to influence and communicate expectations of company values and safety performance, asset preservation. Driver training is a constant. It's progressive and caters for the individual. And what I mean by that, a driver trainer that comes in and when I've managed an RTO myself, I hear, oh, this guy's no good. I'm thinking, wow, why are you telling me this? It's your job as a driver trainer to get him to that point of where everyone else is. That's your business. It's not about turning around and say he's no good and dismiss him. It's about investing time in that person to get him there. Obviously, a person that's grumpy and all that sort of thing, well, they may not be a good fit for the business. But a person that has good soft skills, like I said, good behaviour, doesn't swear all the time, dresses neatly. If that person's got that there, teaching them to drive, teaching them about the delivery process as such is very, very easy. Those people will take that on. Now, the use of adult learning techniques, demonstration, shared activity, observation. So when I've onboarded someone, I always did what they call a demonstration drive. So I would walk them through. Here's the observer. He's watching me. Show him how to collect the paperwork. Who's who? Introduce him to the allocators or schedulers. Go to the truck. Take him through the pre-trip. Jump in, and I would be yapping to him the whole time, right? And I'd take him out on the road, and I would basically tell him what I'm doing. That I'm watching both of my mirrors. The system of looking ahead as far as you can. Look to your dash. Look to your left mirror. Look to your right mirror. Then look ahead again, and repeat that pattern, right? That I drove defensively, so if I could see bright lights on lined up cars well ahead of me, well, that was a signal there for me to start backing off and start touching my brake. I would actually comment on all of that, on what I was actually doing, and revise that with the person later on. So then I would put them in the saddle, and we'd do it together. And like I said, I'd go through that positive reinforcement. If he missed something or did something not quite right or didn't observe properly, I didn't go after him over it. I kept the conversation going, saying, "Oh yeah, look, mate, that wasn't that great. Let's see how we go the next time, right? Or this is what I would do." So we'd share that driving experience a lot closer there. And finally, the observation, which was basically watching the driver doing it himself. And that could be, day 3 out of a 5-day program. there watching him do it all by himself, and you're just, just fine tuning a couple of bits and pieces, and evaluating that on how he's going. I'm a great believer in verification of competency. You need to verify that they've got the skills, and you can do that through different check sheets. You can do it on an iPad with a tick box type thing, but verification of competency is all about having key performance criteria. So what is success and what is not successful, like in a gear change, in a reversing skill. You really do need to walk away from that person and ask yourself, and be honest with yourself, are they right to go solo? The question is, are you happy for that person to be in a truck on the road with your family in the vicinity? And if you've got a doubt there, then no, they're not ready to go. Some drivers, an experienced driver that's been around a bit, you might only need 3 days training. He's already done that particular line of work before. He exhibits the proper behaviours and attitudes, and may need less time. But to some drivers, and they've only got into truck driving because they can't get a job in their line of work that they'd like to aspire to, know nothing about trucks. So it might take longer, right? They've got that good soft skills that they're going to be valuable to the company, that it'd be worthwhile investing more time in them. All right, so just some pictures there. One of them is overcome language barriers. A picture is better than 1,000 words. I've got a picture there in the right-hand side there. It's a map. And I've got some stills. It's something I crafted for a different delivery solution to a store that had a broken down dock. Imagine that picture of that map with all the arrows and the loading zones if I had to put that into writing, into text. That, their eyes would glaze over in the first half a minute of starting to read it, whereas they can look at that and take it with them, and they think, oh yeah, okay, this is the way I go in. I go in there, there's the loading zone, and oh wow, I've got pictures of where I've got to get to and what it looks like. Now that doesn't matter what where you come from, that map is understandable. Very, very understandable, and it works. All right, I'll move on the next slide. Also, the other one down the bottom there was just an example of tailgate and EPJ delivery assessment, and there's all sorts of forms. Different companies have different types, but basically that's it. It's kept on file. Skill matrix. I know some companies, they have a yearly revisit of the driver and all that sort of thing, that everything's still in place, that the message is still there. I used to get experienced drivers saying, you can't tell me anything, Marcus, I've been driving for 17 years. I used to cop that, and my response was, well, mate, you probably did everything right for the first 2 years, but ever since then, you've probably gone downhill. So let you prove it to me. You've called me out on this. Let's go. Show me what you can do, mate. And one of the other things too, when I did come back from an assessment with the driver, being fit for work to go with the company, the site manager used to say to me, he said, oh, how'd that bloke go? I said, good, he's industry standard. And he'd look at, he'd go, what's industry standard? And I said, well, he probably won't be able to reset his license and pass, but he's knowledgeable enough and equipped enough to make the right choices and not get himself into trouble out in the workforce. So that use of the site manager, he just really didn't quite know what I meant by that. All right, the last thing I wanted to touch on is different modes of learning. I believe it should be a combination of all. And I'll just go clockwise. So simulators, I had a lot of experience with simulators, and they're great in some respects, but you won't get a license in a simulator. Right, it lacks that tactile feel, the ambience around the vehicle, the noises, the toots, the what's going on, the cars that drift 6 inches too close to you and all that. Simulators won't actually give the driver that particular experience, but what it will do, you can simulate a blowout on a tyre, can simulate a hub fire on a trailer, you can simulate any of those sorts of things, black ice, drive experience, and it readies the person. Wow, geez, I'm losing control here, and guess what? There's no problems with it happening. And that little bit of exposure on a simulator is a great thing. The other thing, online training, good in certain respects, very good in certain respects. Once again, you can't teach a person to drive a truck on online training, but what you can teach them, fatigue management, facts, figures, mass management, cold chain experiences as such, more data and more process. Online training is good and should be part of it. A lot of inductions that I used to do for one particular firm was more about online training rather than the actual induction as a strict induction. Normal induction is, this is a site, this is where you go in, you smoke over there, you hear a siren, you run out the gate there and all that sort of thing. But the inductions I had with one firm were more about driver training, and I actually went through that with the driver. We did it together. All right. I'll go down to gamification learning, which is something that I've come across the last 5 years. What it is, basically, there's a lot of platforms with this particular style of things, and the purpose of it is to keep things front of mind. With drivers traveling all over the place, it's hard to pull together 30 or 40 drivers in one room and go through something. So a simple app on a mobile phone can be used, and you'd say possibly put together 20 or 30 different questions relating to a subject matter. We had a campaign there on frozen delivery, dairy delivery, fridge settings and all that. And the best thing about that gamification platform was that you had your 4 questions. One was right, 2 were close, and 1 was a complete myth. Well, that platform was able to feed back to management over what people were getting right on the questions and what people were getting wrong. And therefore, you were able to actually identify where the message is lost or where the message is coming good. I used to have drivers chase me around. Oh, I don't know this question. And I thought, oh, fantastic. I used to love that. So we used to sit down together and go through the question, and I'd tease out of him, why do you think that's right, and all this sort of thing, and the learning actually happened. The other thing too that's a little bit of a challenge for everyone, and it's all new and it's all happening, is artificial intelligence. We have eye-seeing cameras in vehicles now that register fatigue, that register driver distraction, mobile phone use, and all that. Your driver trainer, look, he's going to have to explain what it's all about. So he has to intimately know what the technology is all about to get across there. Even trucks nowadays, when they're catching up, they're getting things that some cars have got, have had for quite a while, like adaptive cruise control, lane departure warning, collision warnings. Those things have to be taught to the new driver. Otherwise, if he doesn't know what's going on, he can get the fright of his life. All right, I'll end on that particular point. Time's sort of getting away, and I'll ask any questions.
Yeah, we got a couple here, Marcus. So Dave's asking one about in fuel efficiency terms, what's a good driver's effect on fuel costs versus a poor driver?
A poor driver will be 20% more less efficient in fuel usage. When I was with an RTO look, and this is going back to the days of manual trucks, it was at least 20% difference. A truck over revving, it's going to use more fuel than one that's not. By the same token, a driver that can anticipate traffic movement, proper lane selection, can actually keep the truck rolling. That's important. Coming to a complete stop for any vehicle is going to use a lot of fuel to break inertia away from the standing start. But if a driver can read it or is reading the traffic properly, as best as he can anticipate those particular things and get the best out of the drive.
That's great. Thanks, Marcus. And another one here from Cameron. As a trainer, are you involved with fleet management and achieving KPIs set for the fleet? And then the second part of the question, and how much of your influence is psychology? And finally, how often does the average driver need an assessment?
Okay, I'll work backwards from that question. So average license assessments are around about an hour and a half. And that's just the drive part. The reversing's probably another at least half an hour. The best way to do an assessment is on a live run, is actually doing a run. Now, I'm not talking about going from Melbourne to Echuca to do an assessment. I'm talking about going from Laverton to Truganina to do an assessment. You try and keep it as efficient as possible, and you can sometimes pick those particular activities to draw out that particular thing.
Yeah. And how often, Marcus? How often would you do this? Is it annual, biannual, every 3 years?
Yeah, annual. Some businesses biannual. Look, I suppose it just depends on the policy of the organisation at the time. There's no right or wrong, but it gets back to, if you've got a fleet of 200 drivers or 300 drivers, well, you're not going to get that done in a year unless you've got someone full time. So you do have to have that little bit of a pragmatic approach to it as such. That if something happens, say a driver has an accident of some particular sort, there is also a little bit of what you call remedial training. Go back out with that driver the next day, get him back on the horse, and go through it, get his confidence back up. Assess how it happened. So that there is a lot of psychology with it, right? But the psychology should be not a manipulative type of thing. It's more of a positive reinforcement. You want that person. What's the old saying? You give them a fishing rod, not a fish.
Yep. Which is a perfect one into how much of your influence is psychology.
A lot of it. Yeah, I mean, I've had people that almost, especially in training for licensing at an RTO, where I can see it's usually about a 40-minute mark thereabouts that a person's absolute concentration starts to wane. They start to get anxious and start making mistakes. I would turn around and say, "Hey, mate, give me a go. I'm pretty bored sitting over here. Let me have a drive for a while." Pressure release. I'd jump in and give a bit more of a commentary drive, and he would have a mental break from that. And then when I think he's settled down enough, then we swap back over again.
Nice. And the first part of Cameron's question was, and as a trainer, are you involved with fleet management and achieving KPIs set for the fleet?
Yes, of course, you're integrated into the operations and management, fleet maintenance as well. I've had mechanics turn around and said to me, mate, this guy's been doing X, Y, Z, and this is a third set of brake pads we've changed in the last year. He's obviously riding his brakes or doing something really bad. That's a red flag that, hey, I need to get with this guy to get him up to speed. So you actually integrate with everyone. It's part of those KPIs. Your ultimate KPI is when nothing happens. 0 incidents, 0 injuries, 0 asset repairs. That's your ultimate KPI. As a driver trainer, that's you.
Yeah. And there's a fair point just raised by Craig just here as well. And this is a growing cohort. Just remember that we have female drivers entering the industry.
Sorry, Jerome, you're just dropping out there again. I'll try and anticipate the question there. Sorry, you dropped out, Jerome.
Yeah, sorry about that. So there's just a point here just made by Craig. Yep, just remembering that there's female drivers in our industry as well. And I think that's going to be increasing cohort as we move forward as well. So,
when I was talking about having buddy trainers, one of my best buddy trainers was actually a girl. And she was very, very good at her stuff. Very professional, process driven to the T. And I had no problems with sending her out with other female drivers and other blokes as well. She was fantastic. I mean, just an anecdote there from Ford Motor Company. I remember the boss of Ford Motor Company Australia wanted to take all the guys off forklifts and put girls on them because they treated them better. They were more caring for the equipment and would have reduced maintenance costs. So, I'd encourage any girl that in the driving space that wanted to aspire to get into training to take it on, do it.
Thanks, Marcus. And a couple of questions here. Len asks, what qualifications do you consider are the minimum for a fleet trainer?
At the moment, look, a lot of businesses ask for Cert 4, Workplace Training and Assessment. The problem with that now is it's almost like a diploma course. It's actually a little bit out of reach. But I tend to think that some micro credentials would suffice. Some parts of it, assessment tools, route planning, other parts of the Cert 4 would be good to have. But like I said, industry is sort of demanding a Cert 4 in workplace training and assessment. I hope that answers the question sufficiently, do. Apologies, people. I think Jerome's connections are plaguing us at the moment with being inefficient. Just wait for him to come back on. I've got a question here. Those that can hear me from Kelvin. Do buddy trainers earn extra remuneration for their role? Some businesses pay a leading hands allowance of $17 a day. with the buddy trainers. The organisation I was with did that. That was a bit of incentive for people to get on board. It was so successful, I even had subcontractors work as buddy trainers. As a matter of fact, the majority of my buddy trainers in one organisation were subcontractors that stepped up and were willing to show people how to do their business.
Sorry about that, Marcus. I dropped off again.
That's all right.
And all my chat's sort of been wiped. So I missed other questions that came through from other people. I apologize for that. Hopefully you've got them, you're able to answer them as we went along.
I've been able to answer a couple there, yeah.
I saw there's another couple in there. I'm not sure why my connection. Marcus and I tested this yesterday and it all worked perfectly. It's Murphy's Law. So and obviously you've answered it well, seeing the question answer there from Marcus. Are there any others I missed? Or I think you've done a fantastic job today, Marcus, dealing with my dropping in and out from time to time as well.
Yeah. I've got a question there from Vanish. And how do you think the new closing loopholes #2 bill 2023 affect drivers and or road transport? I'm not sure on that. I really don't know. I really need to sit down and look at what the legislation is. By the same token, I think there's an understanding in transport that it's not quite 24/7. Right, but if you're in a business and you've got 5 drivers that haven't turned up on the weekend or Saturday night, wow, yeah, you are going to be on the phone ringing people at home to see if they want work and like to come in. I tend to think it would be very practical to have an understanding between the drivers. You've got that good relationship that you can give them a call and keep the business rolling.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Marcus. One last question here we'll take, and then we'll have to call it quicks. How can you help encourage clients to take up a VOC or an external driver trainer when they may not see value in it? What a great question from Kate.
It is. I suppose, look, it's a little bit like in HSC, lead indicators. Lead indicator is, the amount of conversations, observations, audits, things like that. The driver trainer does it precisely that. The value is in prevention. If you're averaging an accident a week or something like that, you've got some serious problems there. With all sorts of fallout, customer fallout, asset repairs, lost time, possible injuries. Driver trainer can mitigate that. Good driver training. As a matter of fact, when I was with Ford Motor Company, it was 10 years after I started that we were put through a 5-day defensive course with Decker in Shepparton at the time. And wow, that's when we stopped becoming cowboys and we became professional drivers. We had a trainer there that we could pick their brains for a full 5 days on everything. And it worked. Cost, like I said, accidents were down. Drivers felt chuffed. They got feedback on their skills. They got feedback on things they need to improve on. And it was nothing but a 100% positive appraisal for that particular program.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Marcus. I guess that almost be, if you have in 30 seconds, one message you'd like to leave with everyone, what would you like to say?
Hi, would you like to join this meeting now?
Sorry, I had someone talking. Look, my message is basically invest in your people. If you're getting the best out of your people, you'll get the best out of your business. Look at what other people do. what other businesses do, and good looked after people will look after the business.
Thank you, Marcus, for giving us your time today and sharing. I agree with Edwina. It was a great inspirational session. And I hope you can join us others for future ones coming up. We'll have SXP Protection and Origin Energy, David Jenkins. Some people may know him from the light vehicle space, and BHP, a range of others. So Marcus, thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Thanks, Jerome, and thank you for everyone that's attended, and I really appreciate your attendance.
Pleasure. And thank you so much for your great questions, everyone. Have a great day and look forward to next time. Take care.